When a recession hits, current income falls. And we're showing this as a decrease in the supply of goods today. The supply of goods today is going to shift in. We're going to have lower income at the initial interest rates, and therefore wealth is going to fall. So consumers are going to reduce their demand for goods today and in the future. But because current income has fallen relative to future income, and consumers want to smooth consumption, they will actually end up saving less today than they were saving before this decline in income. And that allows them to push some of that decline in income into the future. So we're going to get shifts today, both in the supply curve and in the demand curve. And that's what shows up here. The decline in supply today shifts supply in from the blue line to the red line, with the supply being Y1 falling to Y2. At the initial interest rate, the decrease in income today reduces wealth, and that then decreases the demand for goods today. Now, as I said, the demand for goods today is actually going to decline by less than the supply does. And the reason for that is that the consumer is going to want to reduce savings. And by reducing savings, what the consumer is able to do is take some of the hit to income today and push it into the future, and therefore smooth consumption. But because we have fewer goods today, we see that the interest rate is going to get driven up, because that's the relative price of goods today in terms of goods tomorrow. And there are fewer goods today relative to the future. So that relative price has to rise. What happens if there were to be a permanent decrease in income? And here what I mean is that current and future income fall proportionally. So there's no change in the relative amount of income today compared to the future. Now, because this is a permanent decline, consumers' desire to lend or borrow isn't going to change. Consumption is automatically smoothed because we have income falling both today and in the future in some proportionate amount. And so consumers are happy to consume their income without there being any change in the real interest rate. And that's what we see in this picture. We're just looking at the market for goods today. Supply shifts in, demand shifts in proportionately because of the decline in income and wealth. And the market will continue to clear. That is, people will be happy consuming whatever the current endowment is without any change in the real interest rate. And again, what you want to remember here is that R is the relative price of goods today in terms of future goods. And because the quantity of goods supplied today and in the future has declined proportionately, there's no change in the relative amount of goods between today and the future. And therefore, there should be no change in that relative price. Pulling it all together, we've looked at lower future income, lower current income, and then permanently lower income. When income falls in the future relative to the present, there are more goods today relative to the future. And that then is going to drive down the real interest rate. That is, goods today become relatively cheap compared to future goods. On the other hand, if income falls today relative to the future, then goods today become scarce relative to goods in the future. And therefore, the real interest rate rises. There's a typo here. And then in the last case, if income falls today and in the future, and there's no change in the relative availability of goods today versus the future, then there'll be no change in the real interest rate. So the real interest rate is the price of goods today in terms of goods tomorrow. And the real interest rate will change only when the relative availability of goods across time changes.